everyone. I'm Jennifer Hasegawa, and I'm a community cookbook archivist living in San Francisco. And today I'm so excited to be able to share with you a recipe for a dish called Nishime. Nishime is a Japanese stew that incorporates some of my most favorite ingredients in Japanese cooking. Nishime is a usual part of a menu or group of foods we call osechirori or New Year foods. So they're a set of dishes that we cook in celebration of the new year. And this is why Nishime is so meaningful to me, because it signals celebration, it signals family gatherings, that some good times are about to happen. And as you'll see as I demonstrate the technique, it's not about necessarily celebration in terms of like having lavish or sort of expensive ingredients. It's more about actually osechirori coming out of this tradition of people not being able, or kind of there was a taboo around starting up a hearth in your house or cooking in your house for 3 days after the new year. So a lot of the osechirori foods are ones that you can prepare in advance, and they taste good at room temperature and they can keep for a couple of days. The recipe I'm going to demonstrate today, or riff on today, is from a website I founded. The website is called cowcowchronicles.org, and cowcow is Hawaiian Creole English or Hawaiian Pidgin English for food or to eat. And the aim of this website is to preserve, to archive these vintage, hard copy only, community-based cookbooks that were published in the Hawaiian Islands in the mid to late 20th century. These cookbooks are iconic in the islands, and they mean so much to the people of Hawaii. And yet, as we use them, see, like some of these were published in the 1950s, so when we use them, they're literally falling apart in our hands as we cook the recipes in them. So we knew that we just had to start preserving. We had to start digitizing them and sharing them. And please feel free to visit, and whether you are from the islands or have a piece of the islands in your heart, please take a look and explore, and take a look at some of the recipes that came out of this really very pivotal era in the Hawaiian Islands. And it's all about really preserving the history of Hawaii cooking, the culture behind Hawaii cooking, the techniques, and about preserving it for generations to come. So thank you for joining me here today. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's get started by taking a tour of the ingredients in our stew. Starting at the upper left and moving downward, we have water, one of the most important ingredients in a stew, shiitake mushrooms, salt, shoyu or soy sauce, and sugar. Then moving to the right and upward, we have gobo or burdock root, carrots, shoga or ginger, fried tofu, daikon, and some oil. Then moving to the right and downward, we have renkon or lotus root, nishime kombu or long strips of dried seaweed, araemo or dashin, takenoko or bamboo shoots, and finally konyaku or yam cake. So the first thing we want to do to get started is soaking your kombu or your dried seaweed to reconstitute it, and also to let some of the concentrated salt that's coating the seaweed right now allow it to wash off. And so you want to let it soak for about 10 minutes. And then after those 10 minutes, you have these really beautiful strands of silky seaweed. And for the stew, we want seaweed knots. So we're going to tie simple knots about every 2 inches, and then cut them apart. So this is another lovely aspect to Nishime and its inclusion in these osechi rori or New Year foods, which is that many of the ingredients have some sort of symbolism to them that they build into the dish. And kombu, these seaweed nuts, symbolize happiness because kombu sounds a lot like the Japanese word for rejoicing or being happy, which is yorokobu. Now let's prepare the konyaku or yam cake. Now, konyaku is made from the konjac plant, the same plant that shiitake noodles come from, which some of you may be familiar with. These are these low-carb, keto-friendly noodles. So this is the same sort of thing, but in block form. So take the cake and slice it into about a 1/4-inch thick slices. And then I'm going to add some very simple flair to it. And you'll see that in this demo that I'm going to do this to a few different ingredients that we're including today. And these flourishes are absolutely unnecessary. But for me, this is what makes the dish so special, right? We take this really humble yam cake and in presentation, we elevate it, right, for the celebration. So I'm going to cut a slit down the middle of the slice, and then I'm going to pull the end of the slice through the slit. So just cut the slit, take an end of the slice and pull it through. And this is a really simple, fun technique that I like to add to my nishime, but of course not at all required. And next I'm going to take our carrots, which we want to cut into 1-inch pieces, but first I'm going to add some flair to them too. And so do not try this at home without some training first. I'm not that great at it, and my knives are pretty dull, but I like adding these notches, 5 notches around the carrot, so that when I slice them, they look like sakura or plum blossoms. This art form, not so much an art form when you watch me do it, but it is called morimono, or at least this is what my aunties called it. It's like ikebana, flower arranging, but with food. And now I'm going to cut my daikon into 1-inch thick slices, and then I'm going to cut them into quarters. So next, let's take a look at our lotus root. The original recipe doesn't include it, but I love adding it to my nishime because lotus root is delicious and it is so strikingly beautiful. So going back to the symbolism of some of the ingredients we're using today, the lotus root has these holes in them, or pukas as we call them in Hawaii. And these holes represent focus and clarity of vision. And now we're going to take a look at one of my favorite ingredients in nishime, shiitake mushrooms. And with these, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of flair to them by making 3 notches in the center of the mushroom cap. Again, a really simple technique, but it adds some thoughtfulness and maybe even a kind of mindfulness to the dish. And the 3 notches show up really nicely after the stew is cooked. Next, we're going to cut the pieces of fried tofu in half. You may end up getting a different shape of fried tofu, so just cut them into about 1-inch pieces. Now, for the burdock root or gobo, peel them with a vegetable peeler just like you would peel a carrot, and then cut them on the diagonal into about a 1/4-inch thick slices. And after you cut them up, put them in some water to keep them from turning gray. Burdock root is a really long root. And when you buy them in the store, sometimes the store doesn't cut them up beforehand, so you can end up walking out of the store with a root that is like 3 or 4 feet long, which is kind of fun. But this is where their symbolism comes in. So we include gobo, this long root that grows straight down into the ground, as a symbol of a strong foundation. And now, last but not least, our araemo or dashin. This is the most contentious of the ingredients, but it is absolutely delicious and is, for me, what makes nishime nishime. The process of peeling and cleaning these innocent-looking little roots needs some prep. When peeled araemo are raw and they touch your skin will get very, very itchy. So wear gloves,
before you start cleaning them. So peel them just like you would a potato and then cut them into 1-inch pieces. Once cooked, they won't make you itch anymore. And if you have any apprehensions about using this, just go ahead and substitute with potato and it'll be just as delicious. And now we have our completed mise en place of all of our interesting ingredients, some of them with a little more flair than others, but each ingredient is bringing its special qualities to the nishime. And now let the stewing begin. We're going to start by refrying the fried tofu in some oil until it starts to getting brown on the cut sides. And really, the next steps, what we're really going to do now is just add the ingredients in an order according to how fast or slow they're going to cook. So now we're going to add water and the kombu nuts and simmer for 10 minutes. Next, add all of the seasonings, so the shoyu or soy sauce, sugar, salt, and grated ginger, and simmer for about 5 minutes. And so one note that as you're cooking, as I'm cooking this, I'm watching the liquid level in the stew, so we don't want it to get too dry. So if you start seeing it getting a little bit too dry, just add a little bit more water as you go. So to make this pot today, I used about 4 cups of water. Next, add the carrots, daikon, and gobo, and simmer for 15 minutes. Yikes, I forgot to add the lotus root, so I'm going to add it now, but it should have gone in with the carrots, daikon, and gobo. Now I'm going to add the araemo, bamboo shoots, and konyaku, and let it simmer for another 15 minutes. Now I'm going to add a cornstarch slurry, which is a tablespoon of cornstarch mixed with a tablespoon of water. And this helps thicken the stew and helps that delicious broth that we're creating coat every piece of araemo, gobo, konyaku, the tofu, everything gets coated in the sauce. And this slurry isn't necessary, especially if you're making this with a protein like chicken wings, and the fats and collagens in the chicken skin will help do the coating. But when I'm using all vegetarian ingredients, I really love adding the slurry. And last, we're going to add the lovely shiitake mushrooms and cook for another 15 minutes or so. When you're at about 15 minutes, check the gobo and the araimo for doneness. If these 2 ingredients are done, then the rest of the ingredients are ready. And there really isn't, for me at least, a perfect instant at which it'll be done. This dish, as we talked about earlier, is a part of that osechirori where we have dishes that are going to last 3 days, right? So this dish is getting better by the minute, by the hour, by the day, as these ingredients commingle with the sauce. Just taste the sauce, see if it's to your liking. You can always add more soy sauce or sugar or salt to your taste.
And here we have it, our final product, our nishime. I'm having it with a little bit of brown rice this afternoon, but oh so good with some white calrose rice as well. And when you serve it, be sure to include a piece of each unique ingredient we took the time to prepare. I'm gonna go ahead and have a bite right now. As we say, itadakimasu. Please enjoy. Try it. Lots of umami going on, a little salty, a little bit of sweet, delicious. And as we say in Hawaii, onolicious. Thank you so much for joining me today. Take good care.